Okay, so how many of your recent movie nights have involved like, your couch and streaming?
Yeah.
Because today we are going to deep dive into the future of movie theaters.
Ooh, exciting.
We've got this super fascinating article from the BYU Daily Universe, and they really get into it.
Oh, cool.
All kinds of data expert opinions and even some like really strong arguments about the magic of the big screen.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting about this article is it doesn't just say like, oh, theaters are dying. It kind of gets into like the nuances of it and all the different things that are at play. And it definitely got me thinking.
Well, get ready to think some more because we're going to unpack all this.
Okay.
They start off the article with some pretty startling statistics about how our viewing habits are changing.
Okay.
Seems like fewer and fewer people are actually choosing theaters for their first movie experience.
Interesting.
And it kind of makes you wonder what is really driving that shift.
Yeah, well, the numbers definitely paint a picture.
Yep.
If you look back in 2018, 28% of people that they surveyed said they strongly preferred theaters for new releases,
Okay.
and only 15% favored streaming.
Wow.
But then if you fast forward just a couple years to 2020,
Yeah.
it basically flipped.
Oh, wow.
Only 14% for theaters, and then a whopping 36% opting for streaming.
Wow, so that's a huge jump.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the pandemic had an impact on that.
Right.
But you can also see that there was already this like trend towards convenience that was happening even before.
Yeah, it's like we're trading in that ritual of going to the theater for just instant gratification.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm guilty of it.
me too.
I do it all the time.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, like, what were the tangible impacts on the industry even before the pandemic hit?
Yeah, so that's where things get really interesting. Because
Okay.
even before COVID, you could already see that the studios were feeling the pressure.
Mm.
They were already experimenting with like shorter theatrical windows and even some simultaneous streaming releases.
Oh, interesting.
So they were already starting to see the writing on the wall and that audiences were getting used to just like having movies on demand.
Yeah, and then when COVID hit, it's like somebody flipped the chessboard over.
Totally.
The article does not hold back about how brutal it was for theaters.
No, it was like a financial earthquake.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at AMC, the biggest theater chain in the U.S., they reported losing $4.5 billion in 2020 alone.
Oh, my gosh.
It's crazy. And both AMC and Cinemark had to shut down completely for months.
Wow.
So theaters were just like hemorrhaging money and the studios were scrambling to figure out, okay, how are we going to release these films now?
Yeah, you almost wonder if theaters are going to go the way of the dinosaur. It's like we're only going to see them in old movies and stuff.
Right.
But then the article brings up these two Dune movies.
Oh, yeah.
And the director of the 1984 version was like all about that big screen experience.
Huge advocate.
But then the 2021 director was not so happy about the whole simultaneous streaming release thing.
A little bit of a different perspective.
Yeah, and it really shows that generational divide in filmmaking.
Totally.
So David Lynch, the director of the original Dune, he was adamant that that movie was meant for the big screen. Powerful sound system.
The whole experience.
He didn't even want people watching it on home video, which was like the technology of the future at the time.
Right.
But then jump ahead to 2021.
Yeah.
Denis Villeneuve, who directed the new Dune, he was really upset by Warner Bros.' decision to put it on HBO Max the same day it hit theaters.
Yeah, he felt very strongly about that.
He said they hijacked his vision.
Wow, strong words.
Yeah, strong words. So it's like the old guard versus the new reality, right?
Yeah, I think so.
But is simultaneous release really hijacking, or is it just adapting to how people are actually watching movies now?
Yeah, that is a question.
That is the question, and that's where I think Tori Baker, the CEO of the Salt Lake Film Society, she brings up a really interesting point.
Okay.
She argues that theaters offer something that streaming just can't.
Okay, what's that?
Communal experience.
Yeah.
It's not just about watching the movie. It's about sharing that experience with a room full of strangers.
I see.
Like laughing together, gasping together, maybe even crying together.
Right.
She uses this great analogy. She calls it a modern-day campfire,
Oh, I like that.
a place where people gather to just be captivated by these shared stories.
That's a really nice way to put it.
It is. I mean, think about those midnight screenings of big movies.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone's dressed up, quoting lines, like a giant fan club meeting.
Totally.
And the article uses Spider-Man: No Way Home as a perfect example.
Oh, yeah. Good one.
That movie just crushed it at the box office, and people were literally cheering in the theaters.
You can't get that at home.
You can't recreate that energy at home, even with the best surround sound system.
Right. Spider-Man, No Way Home really tapped into that pent-up demand for a shared social experience.
Yeah.
It was like a cultural event. It wasn't just a movie you watched on your couch.
Right, exactly.
But the article also brings up that a lot of critically acclaimed films, like The Last Duel, completely bombed in theaters.
Yeah, even with all the good reviews.
Yeah, so it makes you wonder, was Spider-Man just this, like, glorious anomaly, or are theaters becoming more like venues for those mega blockbuster events that really need a crowd to, like, amplify that experience?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it makes me really rethink how I choose what to watch and where I'm going to watch it.
Yeah,
Because I love the convenience of streaming,
totally.
but there's just something so special about that collective energy in a packed theater,
Yeah, for sure.
especially for certain types of movies. But this is just the beginning.
Oh, good.
We are going to dive even deeper into this fascinating evolution.
And it's not just, like, where we're watching, it's also what we're watching.
Right.
Streaming platforms have so much content, and it's definitely having an impact on the types of movies that are being made.
Yeah, the article pointed out, like, it feels like streaming has really opened up the floodgates for genres that might not have made it in theaters.
Exactly, like romantic comedies. Like, they were huge in the 90s and the early 2000s.
Totally.
But they haven't done so well in theaters lately.
No.
But on streaming platforms, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
And they seem to be finding an audience.
Yeah, I mean, it makes you think, like, is the way that movies are being distributed actually influencing the kind of stories they get told?
Yeah. I think it's definitely a factor.
I mean, think about The Last Duel that we talked about.
Yeah.
It flopped in theaters,
Right.
but I actually watched it streaming, and I really liked it.
It's interesting, right?
Yeah.
It's like different platforms for different tastes.
Yeah, and it makes you think about, like, how much power those platforms have.
Oh, yeah, they're data-driven machines.
Yeah.
Like, they know exactly what their subscribers are watching, what they're searching for, what's keeping them engaged.
It's a little creepy.
It is kind of creepy, right?
Yeah.
But they use all that data to decide what content to make.
It's like a feedback loop.
It is. The more we watch certain types of movies, the more they make.
So it's not just about where we watch. It's also what we watch.
Right.
And what we watch is being shaped by these algorithms and viewer data.
That's right.
It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it.
It is.
But it brings us back to that concern about quality that Professor Loosely brought up.
Yeah.
Is all this content on streaming platforms actually leading to a decline in the overall quality of filmmaking?
It's a worry, right?
Yeah.
Because when a movie gets a theatrical release, there's a lot more at stake.
Yeah, like they're really investing in it.
Big marketing budgets. They're building up hype, aiming for that big opening weekend.
It's like a whole event.
Yeah, there's definitely this perception that a theatrical release means something.
Yeah, it's like a stamp of approval.
Totally.
It's like being invited to the Oscars versus doing like an open mic night.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But with streaming, the barrier to entry is much lower.
Right.
Films can just kind of appear without much fanfare, less marketing,
Yeah.
and maybe not as much care put into the actual filmmaking.
So not all streaming content is bad.
Oh, of course not.
But as viewers, we have to be more picky.
Right. I think so. We can't just assume that because it's easy to watch, it's automatically good.
Yeah.
We need to be more critical, more selective about what we choose to consume.
It's like choosing a book.
Exactly.
You wouldn't just grab any random book off the shelf.
You'd read reviews, you'd get recommendations,
Yeah.
you'd look for authors you trust.
You want something good.
Right.
So we need to apply that same kind of thinking to our streaming choices.
I think so.
So with this whole hybrid future that this film critic David Starrett talks about,
Yeah,
is it a good thing or a bad thing?
that is the question.
I mean, more choice, more access,
Yeah.
but maybe at the expense of quality.
And that shared cultural experience.
It's tricky.
It's complicated.
Yeah.
I mean, on the one hand, greater accessibility is definitely a good thing.
Right.
Smaller films, independent projects, diverse voices, they all have a platform now.
Yeah, it's like democratizing storytelling.
Totally.
But are we losing something in the process?
Yeah. Possibly that shared cultural experience, that excitement around a theatrical release, it's becoming less common.
Yeah, and like we said, there's always that risk of quality going down.
Yeah, quantity over quality.
So how do we even judge a good movie anymore?
That's a good question.
I mean, in the past, it was all about box office numbers or what the critics said.
Yeah, those things don't really apply in the same way with streaming.
So we need a whole new set of criteria.
We do. We need to look beyond the hype and the algorithms
Yeah.
and focus on storytelling originality, emotional impact, cultural relevance.
It's about trusting our gut.
Is this movie speaking to me?
Does it make me feel something?
Yeah. Do I care about these characters?
I mean, in a way, we all need to become film critics,
I think you're right.
develop our own taste.
Be more discerning about what we watch.
I mean, I guess that's kind of what we're doing right now with this deep dive.
Exactly.
We're not just passively watching movies, we're thinking about them.
We're analyzing them, debating them.
We're becoming more conscious consumers of film.
And that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think so too.
Mm.
Okay, so we've talked about how streaming has changed the types of movies being made,
Yeah.
the quality of those movies,
Right.
and how we even judge them.
Right.
But what about the filmmakers themselves?
Yeah.
How are they adapting to this whole streaming world?
That's a big question.
It is. I mean, the article talks about how those traditional ways of making money from movies like theaters, DVDs, cable,
Yeah.
they've all been disrupted by streaming.
Absolutely. The whole landscape is changing.
Yeah. And for filmmakers, especially those outside of the big studio system,
Yeah.
it can be really tough to navigate all of this.
It's like the old playbook has been thrown out.
Yeah. The old rules don't apply anymore.
Right.
So streaming deals don't always mean big paydays.
No, not necessarily.
And there's not a lot of transparency about how the money's even divided up.
Right. It's a black box.
Yeah. So it sounds like not everyone is winning in this
Yeah.
transition to streaming.
That's true.
I mean, the mega blockbusters, they still make a ton of money. And the streaming companies are definitely profiting.
Right.
But the smaller theaters and the independent filmmakers, they're really struggling.
Yeah, it's a whole new ballgame.
And what about us?
The viewers.
Yeah. Are we winning or losing in all of this?
Well, it depends on how you look at it.
Okay.
On the one hand, you could say that streaming gives us a lot for our money.
Right.
Like we pay a flat fee and we get all this entertainment.
Endless entertainment.
Right. But that cost adds up over time, especially if you're subscribed to multiple platforms.
Yeah, it does.
And are we really watching enough to justify all those subscriptions?
That's a good question.
And are we missing out on something special by not going to theaters?
That's the big question.
It is.
I mean, it's kind of like comparing a buffet to a Michelin star restaurant.
Interesting analogy.
You can eat all you want at a buffet,
Yeah.
but you're getting the same quality or artistry.
I see what you mean.
So both have their appeal.
Right.
But we have to be aware of those trade-offs.
Right. Convenience versus quality individual choice versus shared experience. It's a balancing act.
It really is. This whole deep dive has been all about trade-offs.
It has.
Like convenience versus shared experience, quantity versus quality individual choice versus cultural impact.
It's reflecting the big dilemmas of our time.
Yeah, like we have all these choices,
Right.
but every choice comes with consequences.
Exactly.
So bringing it back to the filmmakers,
yeah,
how are they dealing with all of this?
it's tough.
Is that dream of a theatrical release still the ultimate goal?
It's not as clear-cut as it used to be.
Okay.
For some filmmakers, yes, that theatrical release is still the pinnacle. It's validation. It's a chance to see their work on the big screen, to share it with a live audience.
Yeah.
But for others, streaming platforms are a more realistic way to reach people.
Right. And maybe they have more creative freedom.
Yeah, streaming services are more likely to take risks on different kinds of projects.
Yeah, well, studios tend to stick with what they know works.
Right.
So more opportunities, but also more competition.
Exactly. It's harder to stand out when there's so much content out there.
So it's not enough to just make a good movie anymore.
It's not.
It's like filmmakers have to become marketers and brand builders.
They have to build a following.
It's almost like they're entrepreneurs as much as artists.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
Which brings us back to that idea of the event film.
Yeah.
Those big, spectacular movies that
Yeah.
everyone wants to see in theaters.
It's like Avatar or Avengers, Endgame.
Yeah.
Those movies that you just have to see on the big screen.
Exactly. So maybe theatrical releases will become less about everyday entertainment.
Right.
And more about these special occasions.
Like a big event.
Yeah. And theaters could become those places where you go for those really immersive experiences that you can't get at home.
I think that's a real possibility.
And it makes you wonder what kind of movies they'll make for theaters then.
Yeah. Well, we see even bigger budgets.
Even more spectacular special effects.
All about creating that wow factor.
Or maybe we'll see more of those smaller character-driven films.
Yeah, as a counterpoint to all the big blockbusters.
It's exciting to think about.
It is. The future is full of possibilities.
But one thing's for sure.
What's that?
The world of filmmaking is changing fast.
It is.
And we all have to adapt.
Both the creators and the audience.
We can't just sit back and watch it happen.
We need to be active participants.
We need to be aware of the choices we're making.
To support the filmmakers and stories we care about.
And have these conversations about the future of film.
Because it's not just about entertainment.
Right.
It's about culture.
It's about how we tell our stories.
How we share our experiences.
How we connect with each other.
Through the power of cinema.
You know, I was feeling kind of overwhelmed by all this change.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's an exciting time to love movies.
It is.
We have so many choices now,
more than ever before.
and we have more opportunities to discover new voices and new perspectives. And as long as we stay engaged and stay curious and keep talking about all of this,
Yeah.
I think the future of film is going to be amazing.
I agree. I think it's going to be bright.
So let's talk about like the money part of all of this.
Yeah, the economics of it all.
Yeah, because the article mentioned how theaters obviously took a big hit during the pandemic.
Yeah.
But is streaming really like a golden ticket for everyone else?
Well, it's not that simple.
Oh?
I mean, the streaming companies are making a lot of money,
Right, billions.
but their whole business model is totally different from how theaters make money.
Okay.
It's not about those big opening weekends anymore. It's all about keeping people subscribed.
Keeping that monthly money coming in.
Yeah, they need to keep people paying every month.
So they need a ton of new stuff to keep people interested.
Yeah, it's like they're on this treadmill of content.
Yeah, always chasing that next big hit.
Exactly. And that's why we're seeing so many new shows and movies on streaming.
Right. But like we were saying before, does that mean quality is going down?
Yeah, it's a valid concern.
Yeah.
Are we just getting a bunch of mediocre stuff because the algorithm wants more content?
Yeah. Are we sacrificing good movies for quantity?
Yeah, it's almost like the fast fashion of filmmaking.
Ooh, I like that.
Trends come and go,
Yeah.
and there's pressure to just make things quickly and cheaply.
Yeah, instead of focusing on making something really good that will last.
Right.
And Professor Loosley talked about this.
Yeah.
He's worried about how filmmakers actually make money now
Yeah, he's got a point.
because streaming has really disrupted those old ways of making money, like theaters, DVDs, cable.
Yeah, it used to be so much simpler.
Yeah, like a step-by-step process.
Right, a movie would come out in theaters,
Yeah.
then it would go to DVD,
Uh-huh.
then maybe to cable TV,
Yeah.
and each step would make money for the filmmaker.
Right. But streaming has changed all of that.
Yeah, it's a whole new ballgame.
And for people who aren't making those big blockbuster movies,
Yeah, the independent filmmakers.
it can be really hard to get a fair share of the profits.
Yeah, the article talked about how those streaming deals aren't always so great.
And it's not very clear how they even calculate the money.
Yeah, transparency is a big problem with streaming.
Yeah, filmmakers don't always know how well their movies do.
Well, right, they don't know how many people are watching it or how much money it's making.
It's like a secret.
It's a black box.
So it seems like there are some clear winners and losers with this shift to streaming.
Yeah.
The big blockbusters are still doing fine.
Yeah, they're making money.
And the streaming companies are obviously making a ton of money.
Yeah, they're doing well.
But the smaller theaters and those independent filmmakers are having a much harder time.
They are, and it's also changing who has the power.
Yeah, how so?
Well, a few big streaming companies are starting to control a lot of the industry,
Oh, okay.
and that makes you wonder about diversity.
Yeah. Will there still be room for those smaller, more unique movies?
Or will the algorithms just push the stuff that appeals to everyone?
Yeah, it's like we're trading in a diverse ecosystem for just one big monoculture.
That's a good way to put it.
So what does all of this mean for our wallets?
Well, on the surface, streaming seems pretty cheap.
Yeah.
You pay a little bit every month and you get all these movies and shows.
Endless entertainment.
But it adds up.
Yeah, especially if you have multiple subscriptions.
Right. You have to be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
Am I really watching enough to justify all these subscriptions?
Or am I just afraid of missing out?
It's like having a fancy wine cellar versus just buying whatever's on sale at the grocery store.
That's a great comparison.
They both give you what you need,
Right.
but the experience and the quality are different.
So it's not just about the money either.
No.
It's about the experience too.
Are you missing out on that special feeling of seeing a movie in a theater?
That shared experience with other people.
The big screen, the amazing sound.
It's a question we all have to ask ourselves.
Yeah, what kind of experience do you want?
This whole deep dive has been all about weighing those different options. Convenience versus experience, quantity versus quality, individual choice versus impact on everyone.
It's a lot to think about.
It is, and there aren't any easy answers.
We're all figuring this out together.
Yeah, trying to keep what's special about movies while embracing the new technology.
Exact.
So before we wrap up, what's the biggest thing you've taken away from all of this?
I think the most important thing is that the future of film isn't set in stone.
Okay.
It's something we're creating right now with
Yeah.
every choice we make.
As viewers, as filmmakers, as people who love movies.
We're all part of this conversation.
So it's not just about watching movies.
Yeah.
It's about being aware of the bigger picture.
Understanding that our choices matter.
They affect the industry and our own experiences.
We need to be asking those tough questions.
Yeah.
What do we want movies to be in our lives?
How can we support the stories that are important to us.
How can we make sure that cinema keeps thriving?
I have to say, this whole deep dive has really opened my eyes. We started with a simple question about the future of movie theaters,
Right.
but we ended up talking about so much more.
We did.
The culture, the money, the creative, challenges, the ethics of it all.
It's all connected.
And I think we all learned something about ourselves along the way,
Hopeful.
about our choices and how much power we actually have.
Yeah, we're not just consumers, we're creators too.
So to everyone listening,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on all of this?
What choices will you make?
What role will you play in shaping the future of film?
Keep watching
Keep thinking.
and keep talking about it.
This is a conversation that's just getting started.